R.G. Armstrong I only got to know on Pat Garrett, but he was also part of the repertory company. Um, Sam always picked people who understood him and understood their own life through Sam's definition of them. When you talk about RG, I think his performance speaks for itself. There's nothing I can contribute that would embellish or definitely not tarnish, but embellish what you saw on the screen. He was a brilliant actor, and Sam took advantage of him and hired him because he knew what he could get out of him.
Could we talk, RG, about the part of Joshua in Ride the High Country and how that evolved working with Sam?
Yes, well, Sam Peckinpah, more or less, well, he saw me as a preacher. I told him one time that I wanted to be a preacher, you know, very much, and I broke my mother's heart by not being a preacher. And I went out in the world to try to find truth through poetry and expression and stuff like that. He said, "You don't have to tell me. I know you're a preacher. You can look at you. I can look at you and tell that, you know." Because one time he says, "You didn't know it, but I heard you preach that sermon down there in the backstage bar over there one time when you got half loaded. And it was pretty good, impromptu sermon." "Well, I've been wanting to preach that sermon all my life," I said. "Sam, well," says, "well, that's why I want you to play Joshua." And in that film, when I first saw it, I said, it looked like just an ordinary Western script, I mean, a television script to me. But Sam started working on that, and in such a way that I began to see a consummate artist, to me, coming into being, and gradually, scene by scene and day by day, I was getting, well, maybe Hollywood's not so bad after all if I can run into guys like this who work like this, because he made a connection with you. He felt that we are together and we're going to make something to come through the crap, you know. Like a beautiful flower grows out of the biggest manure pile type thing, you know. So in those scenes with Mariette Hartley, he wanted me to really get down with her, and so before I went in to castigate her for being caught out in the hay with Ron, I wanted to feel it so bad because I was quoting scriptures and stuff like that. And I had, "Mariette, would you slap me to get me in?" I said, "No, you don't want me to do that, all right? Yeah, slap me to get in the mood." And she hauled off and slapped me. I mean, so hard. I'd never been slapped that hard since I was a kid. My head was ringing when I went in and did that scene off of that. And I realized that I got down and began to experience something spontaneously within the scene, and that's what he wanted. He would try to disrupt you, do anything, and when he said print, man, that was one of the greatest reliefs in the world to know, my God, it's good enough to get on the camera. And every time you say, "Well, it's not good enough yet, Sam." "Well, it's good enough for me, let's go." But Sam always envisioned me, and finally I wanted him to see me in a different light also. But he says, every part he gave me was like a killer preacher. A preacher who's converted is now controlling his killer instinct, which is almost, well, he's just barely doing it, is what I mean is. And so all that edge of fanaticism and anger comes out of that frustration of the other through those lines when Joel McCrea and I got in this battle of quoting scriptures and back and forth, trying to outdo each other, you know, about the morality that everybody should live under, you know, and that's down to the gnat's ass. You live it. You don't, there's no variance. There's no, you know, off the beaten path of nothing. No forgiveness. If you don't do it, you're condemned type shit, you know. Well, Joel McCrea was a religious, spiritual man, but, and had been a gunman, but now he's straightening his life up and he's going to be totally honest the rest of his life. And when he runs into Randolph Scott, you know, Randolph Scott wants to con and take the money and the gold and run. But no way. He brought that conflict between two friends. He's always doing that in every film. You notice he's always bringing two friends together and really letting them battle it out. And more or less, he would put me in a part as sort of he always said, why in the hell is it that RG's always a conscience on my damn set? And I wasn't aware of being a conscience, you know, or anything like that, really. I mean, I was more or less a moralistic kind of invisible judge there in every film I did.
So it's Bible in one hand and gun in the other.
That's
Can you
right.
talk about that?
That's right. Oh, well, in Major Dundee, to show you an example of that, I'm playing a jackleg preacher now that the Indians have run off and killed some of my converts, people that I've brought into the God's light, see. So I want to enlist. And so I go in to enlist, and he said, can you carry a Bible and a shotgun in one hand? I says, try me. That's really the way it was. Now, Heston approved after I did a first scene. Yeah, all right. So, but I got the smallest Bible I could get. He never objected to that. And he said, well, give me that shotgun. Here, break it down. And my grandfather's shotgun had an old nail through it. And so he broke that shotgun down, took it apart, and made him take that little pin out of there and put a nail right back through it and bend it. And that's the kind of shotgun. And I rode and did all those, almost got killed in that Tawisla River, and long trek shots with that Bible and that damn shotgun in my hand. It was tiring, you know, I mean, really tiring. We all lost about 20 or 30 pounds on that movie. And it was designed because when we were supposed to be so bedraggled and just a ragtag outfit at the end of that movie, we really were. Our clothes were hanging on us with beards, and, you know, we were really those characters.
Can you talk a little bit about the detail that Sam, for example, on Ride the High Country with the chickens, is something that he really needed?
Oh, all right. We were out there, and they have a chicken wrangler. Every day the chicken was, for a whole week, the guy was standing faithfully by, ready to say, because they all stood that way. Sam created something on a set, ready to go, all day long, you know. The chicken wrangler was there, and he'd feed them and water them, and they'd go, buck, 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 and doing all that stuff around there, and he'd shut the damn chickens up there and, you know, get them away off of there somewhere. But anyway, he never did use them. A whole week went by, and finally the first part of the next week, oh, okay, now let's go. We're ready for the chickens. And the guy said, chicken wrangler ran up. Well, Sam, we didn't bring them out. You hadn't been using them for the whole week, you know. He said, it's costing a lot of money to bring them out here every day, the studio said. He said, get the goddamn chickens out here. I'm not shooting another shot till you get my goddamn chickens out here. That's the way he raised when they made a mistake. He waited for you to make a mistake, man, and then he'd raise hell. But Sam, you know what I mean? We got to go all the way back in and so forth and so on and say, go get the goddamn chickens. So we wondered what in the hell, why he was raising, because that's my first real big movie with Sam, you know. It was his first movie, too, really. And we wondered what in the hell he was going to do with the chickens, see? So he shot a little bit around, and they heard and brought the chickens out there. And so the first thing we saw he was going to do with the chickens, it had me shooting, bending over, on my knees, bending over a makeshift gravestone. And the blood's dripping out there. I'm supposed to where I'm shot, but you don't see that at first. But the way he introduces that scene is he's got some scratch grain all around over here trailing up to the grave. So the chickens, I says, oh, that's what, I'm thinking this while I'm laying here playing dead. That's why he wanted the chickens. The chickens go, bark, 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 and following that grain, and you don't see me there till they get up on the grave, and boom, he has this startling shot of the blood dripping out, and you know that the daughter and Joe McRae and Randolph Scott, they don't know that, you know. So I says, introducing a scene. I'm learning how to make films here, you know, from Sam. I mean, that's the way he introduced it. And when I saw it in the movie house, everybody just jumped when they saw that close-up of the blood dripping down and the chickens leading up to that, startling them. And the next time I saw how he used the chickens was when Warren Oates and John Anderson and so forth were up in the barn loft, and here we're riding in, we suddenly see something's wrong, sense something wrong. The old outlaw men sense something's out, so they make a run and dive into the ditch. Randolph Scott's not there yet. So, and then you see they start shooting back and two from the barn. And so they have, Randolph Scott just comes galloping in to join us, and then they're shooting at him. He did a great roll into the ditch. He literally did that. And I said, my God, this is great to work with these old guys, you know. I call them old, you know. I'm older than they were then. But anyway, the suddenly Warren Oates, because he missed and we got free, and now they got a battle on their hands. The chickens are bark, 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 down in the barnyard. And so he gets on it, he just starts shooting down in the middle of those chickens. The chickens are jumping up, I said. And then when I saw it in the film, the audience started laughing. He broke that tenseness. He was a consummate artist, and by the time that film was over, I said, wow, it might not be so bad working in Hollywood after all if I can work with a director like this, and he lets you sort of in on, a little bit, it lets you experience it with him type thing. I felt that from him, and he would make you feel that you were a consummate artist like he was. See, that was his connection factor with actors.
What do you think it was in Sam's background that locked into that fundamentalist, Bible belt punching ethic?
Well, see, I came from way back in a little country town in Alabama, and the community was riddled with fundamentalism. They were trying to do right. Everybody was trying to raise these tough boys and everything right. See, I got fundamentalism and that kind of thing from the church and the way the people tried to live it out. Sam got it from judges and lawyers and people who tried to impose fundamental law on people, which was sometimes very intolerant of people and too condemnatory of people's foibles and people's miswhacks and people taking sides and it could be framed. And he knew all of that. He got that fundamental thing, and not only that, he saw that was just as violent among the law set as it was among the people.
Can you tell us a bit about how Sam would disconcert his actors on a set in order to get a performance, with a personal example of that?
Yes, in a sense, when it came down to it, Sam was like any authoritarian and fundamentalist, which he transferred from the law into making films. In his artistic drive, I still was a preacher within an artistic setup. But in that scene with Chris Christopherson, when I was sitting back, the lighting was fantastic. Sitting back in the corner with a double-barrel shotgun, and Coburn, who was playing Pat Garrett, went off, to do an errand, and he left a couple of deputies in charge, me and Chris Christopherson playing there in chains or whatever it was. Anyway, they got ready to shoot that, man. It was done with all the kind of preparation, hours of lighting it and rehearsing, and got ready to go. And we got up, and I was marching, striding across after he had sassed me, He said, "Kiss my ass," and I was supposed to fly into a rage and go over. Well, I went halfway across while I was shooting. Sam yelled out, and he'd never done that to me. He'd always been nice and, and considerate and understanding. In the middle of me, before I reached Chris Christopherson, he says, "I don't believe a goddamn thing you're saying or doing," as loud as he could. Man, I stopped in my tracks, and nobody said a thing. It was just dead still. I was in a rage. I could see it. I mean, how dare he do this to me, in front of everybody? And nothing was said. Finally, I got a hold of myself, and I turned around, and I went back and sat down, and I was seething. I said, "Let's go." And I heard him say, "Action." And man, I transmuted that rage and agony. Everything worked like clockwork. When I wasn't supposed to hit the chair. Chris was supposed to take the fall himself. Well, I just barely got the edge of the shotgun on the edge of that chair, and it just flipped him perfect. He went sprawling all over the floor, and I went around, grabbed him by the hair, and stuck the shotgun and said, "Repent, you son of a bitch." You know what I mean? And when I got through and walked out past the camera, Sam says, "God damn," and leaned back in his chair. His director's chair fell over backwards on the chair. "Brilliant," he said. What he did was he provoked me into an insane rage, which is there. He must have known it, or he knew that, and he wanted more of that. See, it wasn't enough of what he wanted out of me. And I said, "That son of a bitch, man." And when they saw it, everybody saw it, said, "Shit, man, that was so fucking real," I mean. And when it was real, if an actor has to, that's what actors have to go through with sometimes. They have to be provoked and I've seen directors do everything imaginable to get actors to come through with it. And I'm not going to tell some of the personal stories outside of my own. But and Mary and I were talking last night about that scene. I says, I said, now this, maybe he wanted to stir up some of the other actors. Maybe Chris. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe he wanted him to come out and get some more fire in Billy the Kid. But he wanted that from me, I know that.
He could sense the demon within you.
Yes. And from then on, I began to work differently. I says, I didn't realize how much you had to get into that to give. I was sort of gotten lazy after 12 years in Hollywood. And when three films by that time by him, you know what I mean? So maybe he did me the greatest favor he could by provoking me and realizing, hey, don't take things for granted. You got to work harder than you ever dreamed of now to be an actor and to grow. And I started doing and working in an entirely different way after 1970 on a part and getting freer in front of the camera. He wanted me to get freer and also to present some of that stuff that was in me that wasn't coming out enough. And he helped me to do that. I mean, he was, as a matter of fact, it was torturous to me at the time, but he could do that.
His ability with actors was personal, but he also surrounded himself with almost a stock company of players, didn't he?
He sure did. As a matter of fact, critics in L.A. I've read in the paper, well, here comes Sam with his Walking Wounded cast again in his picture. You know, he'd do that. I think they said that about, well, I forget which film or two. But that was, you know, Strother Martin, L.Q. Jones, myself, John Anderson, John Chandler Davis, and Warren Oates, and all of us, you know, who were just seething inside, you know, to get something beyond ourselves, because it was all evident from within us that life and our lot and fate in life wasn't enough. And so Sam worked to get that out and to use people that looked like real people. I mean, people, you know, not all handsome.
What do you think Sam's great qualities as a director were?
Oh. Well, first of all, I think saying he's a real artist is sort of nebulous. It doesn't really mean anything, but I think that it was detail. And detail of it could mount to a lot of different things in the film, you know. It was just, well, I considered it magic and magnetic, and I would always try to watch him build a scene. In that scene where they're all laying around, lounging around, the outlaws, little fires, he worked for a day on that. I mean, to get everything just right. A little smoke curling here, dress that wardrobe down, way still too new. Get it down, you know. You know, we're not out in the city limits here. We're way out in the wilderness. Anyway, but it was also his imagination, and it was also his ability. Well, I started out to be a writer, and I gave him some plays, something. He said, you know, you're a better writer than I am, but I'm a doctor. I'm a play doctor. That's really what I am. I'm a craftsman. I know how to put scenes together to make them fulfill and hang together. He was a storyteller in film. He knew how to tell a story and pay off. I turned down a part with him in the Cincinnati Kid to play the part of the father of Tuesday Weld up in the mountains. Carl Swinson finally played the part. Because, I wanted bigger parts, you know, and I made the mistake of turning that down with Sam. I mean, I wanted Sam to see me that I could play Pat Garrett. Do you understand? Or something, not Pat, Pat Garrett hadn't been come along yet, but I wanted to play a part of that stature. That's the way of a lot of character actors, too, I guess. But anyway...
it was detail, particularly.
It was detail. But anyway, when I called him in Torreon, you know, about when he was on Wild Bunch, and Cincinnati Kid, he'd been fired off of it and so forth, and they brought in somebody else. And he says, you wouldn't work for me, would you, you son of a bitch? And he's now on Wild Bunch. Says, that's why I didn't put you on that Wild Bunch, you know. I mean, he didn't mind telling you that, you know. I mean, so I said, okay, Sam. And he said, you better not. I'll send that damn play you want me to read down here, and I'll read it. But you better not turn me down again, you know, as I won't, Sam. So any part he offered me from then on, I had to take it, because he had that way of doing actors, intimidating, you know, because He really got mad because I wouldn't do that part. I said, well, you got fired off of it anyway, Sam. Oh, shut up, you know what I mean? That's neither here nor there.
RJ, if he was back here again, just for a minute, what would you say to him?
What would I say to him? From my perspective now, I wouldn't have said that 20 years ago. Sam, my God, let's stay alive. You know what I mean? Let's outlast them. Let's just stay in there, man, and show them what we really wanted to do. He was getting ready to really do something. He was reflecting, finding in the Western milieu, he reflected violence and he got embroiled in the violence with himself. An artist, I did myself. I got embroiled in drinking, trying to be, you know, Jesus, Buddha, or Milarepa or somebody in life, but you get embroiled trying to live among people without saying what you're doing, you know what I mean? So I'd say, Sam, let's draw back from everything, you know what I mean? Let's get healthy and let's come through and make one last several films till we, you know what I mean? That's exactly what I'd say to him. Damn it. I'm a little pissed off.
Let's hear about that scene and the improvisation of the line.
Oh, well, Sam would let others too, but he let me improvise something if he liked it, and we'll go ahead and try it. Well, in Major Dundee, there was a scene where we're sneaking up to take the French horses and get them. I was to club the guard, one of the guards standing there, then dressed in French outfit and everything. And I just come around with the butt of my shotgun and knock him out. And I said, Sam, let me put a line in there. I said, well, he said, what? And I said, well, let me do it and let it come out. I said, I don't know what. He said, oh, really? He said, well, go ahead if I like it, you know. So when we did it, and I came around with a shotgun like this and hit him, mighty is the arm of the Lord. And looking up at the Lord, I looked up, you know what I mean? And that's what he wanted. He said, yeah, leave it in. He wanted to see, because I'm a preacher, see, and carrying a Bible and a shotgun in my hand, he wanted to see and show, that fitted in with his scheme of things, that the violence also, the killing is being done by Christians, God-fearing people, and religious people, too, in addition to the atheists and non-believers and all those other things. The Christians are killing people. We're all violent, he's trying to say. Sam was trying to reflect in his movies the violence all of us have. When Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, when he said, love your enemy, and when he said the law is fulfilled, well, no more Samson's going out and killing 1,000 with a jawbone of an ass. Do you know what I mean? That's out anymore. If you even think about it, still, you're excoriating your instrument, so to speak. So what I was doing, what he wanted to show, we haven't gotten past that old law yet. 2,000 years later, we haven't got past that killing law. And Sam was like a killer himself. He had, in other words, but he had all that artistic thing. He wanted to live in the creative space. If he could have lived in the creative space, unbothered by the studios, it might have been a whole different picture of Sam coming out. Because on The Rifleman, he created The Rifleman. He was, when I met him on the 4th episode, Killing Me Off, he was a lovable kind of a guy. He gradually became what he was, fighting the people that mess with his movies. He's a consummate artist. How dare you cut my film? How dare you take and cut out all the connective tissues and make it go fast-paced and put martial music behind Major Dundee? That was a great epic film. That was Moby Dick in the desert. And his invisible enemy was that Indian, like the white whale. He says, you son of a bitch, you're the only one outside of Oscar that saw that. See, the writer's structure. That was Moby Dick.
What do you think his personal demons were or became?
Insecurity as a man, unworthiness to fulfill his grandfather's shoes that he loved and adored. He didn't want to be like, as old judge and lawyer, you know what I mean, in that crooked scheme. He couldn't live up to something in himself. And he couldn't really live until he was in front of that camera. I mean, he was lost in life, as far as we all are, really, in a sense, but he had such an insecurity and nobody would think that. He would put the disappearance of the macho man and the individuality like it did in Wild Bunch. And to me, I don't think many people say that, but I knew him very well, and I think it was just such a great insecurity and unworthiness to measure up to something that had already been set by noble men. And this time is the whole society is grinding people, the whole individuality and heart of man into like a cooperative mass. You know, he wanted to strike out for like the last, like a lightning strike in the movies of man's nobility, but it mostly had to show it among the villains, who would at the last chance show the depth of heart, like the gang did at the end of The Wild Bunch. The depth of heart is what he was after to get in the movies, you know, to try to... He was working for his own salvation in movies, too. See, he was purgating me, too, as well as him. I was able to purgate the violence in me and the buried hostility, which I would never express. I would be good to everybody and nice and wouldn't confront them or face them, but I was in danger of exploding. So getting these violent parts and these psycho villains and these crazy characters that they kept giving me in movies, like one director said, get his eyes, come on closer, he's crazy. I found out we're all crazy. For a long time, I thought I was the only one. Sam had a speck of insanity in it, too, do you understand? I did, too. We all did. And that's what was really the glue that kept us together. So us insane bastards, man, are going to get some... We were like the Wild Bunch when we shot a fucking movie. Really. But it was on an artistic principle. When we got ready to shoot that scene, all right now, boys, this is the time to do it. That battle down there at the edge of the river when we get across back into America. You know, and just a ragtag bunch came out. But at least they survived it. And they got their man. But the whole thing is that we are actually mellowed out in here. And I wanted to see Sam mellowed out more, became transcendent human beings like his grandfather was. About the shotgun, and he told me. See, he had a great image behind him.
How do you think he was perceived by the Hollywood community?
Oh, I think he was perceived as very difficult, an arrogant asshole, impossible when you had to deal with him on his ground. And they try to stay away from him. And I've seen him run producers off the set, have them picking up rocks and throwing them, you know what I mean? They tried to fire Sam on Major Dundee. They sent down Ben, down to take Klein, I think, to take care of things. And they were going to fire him after it had been about 3 weeks. He was shooting too much film or something. It wasn't pleasing them. And Charlton Heston said, well, if he goes, I go. We all said, we all go. Said, we were for Sam. And they gave up, and Sam was allowed to finish the picture the way he wanted. But they got him in the editing room. You see, it was like these people are not capable of straight... They don't have the talent. The producers and the element of Hollywood is putting up money and running to edit and discipline and edit an artist's work. They're messing with the artist. Give the artist a freer hand. That's what he's fighting for. Well, there's not many of them as talented as Sam. There are a lot of them good directors and all, but Sam had that insane thing that's why that space, the space in front of the camera was sacred to him, and he protected it. Man, if anybody violated that, they had a fighting tiger on their hands, you know. And he could create an ambiance on the set like any I've ever seen. When you walked on, something's about to happen. Everybody, what is it, you know? When is it going to erupt? That's the kind of feeling you had. I mean, it's that thing. He was like Genghis Khan to the artist, with the artist. Follow me. You know, in other words, we knew we had a leader to fight the thing. Sam's gone, you know, and I miss him. There's not many other directors who will risk their whole career and everything, but he did make good movies. He did, in spite of their cutting, you know, he did make another good movie after... From Ride to High Country. He made Wild Bunch. That was a great movie in terms of showing the last desperate thing in man will finally bring out the hero and the nobility in him. You know, he's going to mess around and fuck up the earth and everything else with all this other shit that's been conditioned into him. It's low level, and they're going to bring now we can at least die. We've got the opportunity now, man, to clean ourselves. Let's show that son of a bitch that cut a little kid's throat like that. Man, in other words, we'll just keep killing and shot full of holes. That's the kind of energy they went after him, plus their own strategic ability already developed. But he made you believe it, that's the thing. He made you believe that last scene. It just about wiped out everybody, the army and everything, as they all were dying. They're all good at it.
Do you think he was a romantic at heart?
Yes. Very romantic. That world doesn't exist, and he was crying for that world to exist, still, like his grandpa in the Old West. And the men, when men stood on their own, and you know, and would develop the kind of men that's almost impossible to develop in an industrialized society. See, the West was a real kind of aberration onto the whole industrial East, so to speak, you know, and agricultural South. It was not anything like that. The West was a whole different trip. That was still inhabited by grizzly bears and Indians and everything else, you know, and that was developed a different kind of man who was still an American. That was what he wanted. In this country, I think he saw what democracy was about, was giving man, more than anything else, giving man a chance to, a common man, the lowly man, the uneducated man, any man who's a human being, to express an individual spark in him and spirit in him, and don't mess with him too much. And if it doesn't hurt anybody, let him go for it. Whereas in all the other societies, mostly, they stomped on him, made peons. You know, every man had a chance to show that in himself and live or die for it. And that's what he thought America was about, or democracy was about, or I don't know whether he's even involved in any of that. He might have been atypical to all of that. He was an artist. That's all he was interested in. Life screwed. Life was fucked life. That's the way he felt about it.